To retake Jerusalem from the Muslim ruler Saladin, who had taken it in 1187, European kings led by Richard the Lionheart launched the crucial Third Crusade, 1189 to 1192. Important conflicts during the Crusade included the Battle of Arsuf and the sieges of Acre and Jaffa. The Crusaders achieved significant triumphs despite their inability to reclaim Jerusalem, and the resulting treaty permitted Christian pilgrims to travel to the city. Christian and Muslim relations in the medieval world were shaped by the Third Crusade, which had a long-lasting effect. Of the three monarchs, Emperor Frederick was the first to go to the Holy Land. He started the expedition on May 11th, 1189, with an army of about 18,000 troops, including 3,000 knights. The Hungarian Prince Jair, the younger brother of King Beorte of Hungary, led a force of 2,000 men who joined Frederick's army after departing Germany. The terrain started to shift as the Crusaders advanced closer to the Byzantine frontier. The Balkans' high slopes and thick forests replaced the undulating lowlands of Central Europe. The army proceeded cautiously, since, despite the land's beauty, there were many hazards, including hostile tribes, perilous passes, and erratic weather. However, the Byzantines encountered their first significant challenge when they arrived at the Byzantine frontier, the Byzantines themselves. The Crusaders soon discovered that their welcome would not be as kind as they had imagined, despite the assurance that they would travel safely across Byzantine territory. Isaac II, the Byzantine emperor, had secretly negotiated with Saladin, promising to postpone the Crusaders in return for the defense of his realm. When the Crusader army and minor Byzantine forces started fighting, things would quickly get out of hand. On August 24th, the siege of Philippopolis started. The Byzantine army retreated as the Crusader army approached Philippopolis. On the same day, a Byzantine messenger brought a letter from Isaac accusing Frederick of conspiring to place his son on the throne of Constantinople, and referring to him as King of Germany rather than Emperor. The Crusaders took control of Philippopolis and its abundant resources 2 days later. The Crusaders then adopted a scorched earth policy and looted. The Crusaders captured several cities and villages over the following several weeks. The Byzantines had to act as a result. There was an ambush by the Byzantines with about 2,000 horsemen. Soon after the local Armenians told the Crusaders of this plot, they dispatched 5,000 cavalry to intercept the Byzantine forces. When the two armies finally collided, a brutal conflict broke out. The Byzantines were defeated in the following conflict. The Crusaders then threatened to assault Constantinople following these small wins against the Byzantines. The Byzantine emperor was compelled to allow the Crusaders safe entry into Asia as a result. The Turkish Sultanate of Rum promised the Crusaders safe passage through the area as well, but they were met with frequent hit-and-run raids instead. A few days later, 2,000 Crusaders destroyed a 10,000-man Turkish army at the Battle of Philon. Following more Turkish incursions, the Crusaders made the decision to take control of the Turkish capital of Iconium in order to restock their supply of food and livestock. At the Battle of Iconium, fought on May 18, 1190, the Crusaders routed the Turks, destroying the city and displacing 3,000 Turkish soldiers. Now much more self-assured, Frederick resumed his quest. Frederick was thrown against the rocks as his horse fell while crossing the South River. Then, in the water, he drowned. A large portion of his force then left for Germany. The remainder of the army headed for Antioch. The imperial army captured the capital of the Seljuk Sultanate and severely damaged Turkish forces, even though it was unable to accomplish its goal of taking Jerusalem. King Richard commanded a force of about 15,000 soldiers. This contingent comprised 2,000 knights and mounted warriors, infantry, and archers. Mercenaries and contingents from Richard's lands in Normandy, Aquitaine, and Anjou greatly strengthened his army. With an estimated 10,000 troops, comprising infantry, archers, 1,500 knights, and mounted warriors, Philip II's army was marginally less than Richard's. On March 30th, 1191, Philip departed Sicily for the Middle East. 2 weeks later, Richard and his men departed. Richard's fleet, which consisted of 180 ships and 39 galleys, was hit by a strong storm shortly after they sailed from Sicily. Eventually, Richard touched down in Cyprus, then a Byzantine province. When Richard was told to leave Cyprus by Byzantine Emperor Isaac, who had broken his word of hospitality, Richard became enraged and took over the island. Richard left Cyprus a few months later to resume his campaign because, despite this victory, his ultimate objective was still the Holy Land. King Guy of Jerusalem was taken prisoner during the Battle of Hattin in 1187, but he was set free by Saladin a year later. After his crushing defeat at Hattin, Guy focused his sights on Acre in an attempt to restore his authority and prestige. Controlling the city was essential for starting the next military operations because Acre was also strategically located as a port. Guy besieged the city with a small Crusader army of about 7,000 men, 400 of whom were knights. Guy's army surrounded the city on August 28, 1189, in an attempt to compel the Muslim garrison to submit. Saladin, however, had established a well-prepared defense in Acre, with an estimated 6,000 troops led by seasoned military figures. The siege's first phase was ruthless and chaotic, marked by sickness, starvation, and regular clashes. Saladin promptly organized his soldiers and started counterattacks from outside the city because he was eager to relieve Acre. Despite intense clashes, neither side was able to establish a clear advantage in the first few months of the siege. European aristocrats and leaders started getting ready to support the Crusader cause as word of the siege spread. Early in 1190, the first notable reinforcements arrived. The Crusaders received assistance from the forces of Leopold V, Duke of Austria, as well as contingents from France and England. More substantial Crusader reinforcements arrived in the spring of 1191. In a short time, the armies of Philip II of France and Richard the Lionheart arrived. New warriors, sophisticated siege engines, and a renewed sense of optimism for victory were all delivered by these monarchs. With 20,000 soldiers now in the Crusader force, Richard, who was renowned for his charisma and military skill, immediately assumed command of the group and began a series of violent attacks on Acre's defenses. By keeping the blockade in place, Richard's naval fleet prevented Acre from getting supplies from the sea. By July 1191, the defenders were worn out, deprived of supplies, and overpowered by the constant Crusader assaults. Following nearly 2 years of grueling combat, the Muslim defenders of Acre were compelled to capitulate on July 12, 1191. Richard the Lionheart and Saladin negotiated the terms of the capitulation. The terms of surrender included the return of the True Cross, a Christian relic that Saladin had taken during the Battle of Hattin, the freeing of prisoners, and the payment of a substantial ransom. After Acre was taken, Richard knew he had to take the port of Jaffa before he could try to take Jerusalem. In August 1191, Richard started marching along the coast from Acre towards Jaffa with a sizable Egyptian fleet that had been seized at Acre. Saladin organized his army to try to halt the Crusaders' approach, with the primary goal being to stop Jerusalem from being recaptured. Richard was aware that heat exhaustion was the biggest threat to his troops, and that water was its most pressing necessity. He moved somewhat slowly, but he was under time pressure. Only early in the morning, before the sun rose, did he march his army. As a source of supplies, a haven for the injured, and close assistance, the fleet went down the coast. He maintained the column in tight formation because he was aware of the constant threat of enemy raiders and the potential for hit-and-run strikes. The Crusaders were constantly harried by Saladin's horse archers. Despite being agitated and tortured by the skirmish tactics, Richard's leadership made sure that discipline and order were upheld even in the most trying situations. Between August 30th and September 7th, Saladin remained within striking range, anticipating a chance to strike should the Crusaders reveal themselves. Saladin understood that his little force would not be sufficient to halt the Frankish army's approach. He had to launch a major offensive with his whole army to accomplish this. Saladin was fortunate that the Crusaders had to pass through the wood of Aruf, one of the area's few wooded places. His army's mood would be concealed by the trees, enabling an unexpected assault. Saladin ordered the Crusaders to be attacked in full force. The Crusaders positioned themselves defensively, with infantry in front and archers behind, as they saw Saladin's force emerge from the nearby woodland. The attack was shifted to the back of the Crusader column, with the Hospitallers bearing the brunt of the strain, after the ceaseless skirmisher attacks failed to produce the intended result. In order to keep his knights for a focused counterattack at the ideal time, Richard was adamant about keeping his army together, causing the enemies to tire themselves in repeated charges. The Battle of Arsuf had now reached a crucial point for the Crusaders. Richard was aware that his knights should not charge until the Saracen horses had started to wear down, and the Ayyubid army was completely committed and engaged. With a scream of "Saint George," Baldwin le Carrel, one of Richard's household knights, broke through the troops and stormed into the Saracen ranks. The remaining Hospitaller knights then followed them. The French knights of the corps that came right before the Hospitallers charged as well, moved by this example. Due to the knights' brutal retaliation for everything they had to endure earlier in the battle, Saladin's army suffered numerous casualties. Arsuf was a significant triumph. Despite losing 7,000 men, the Muslim army was routed but not destroyed. Richard was able to capture, keep, and defend Jaffa after the fight, which was a strategically significant step in gaining Jerusalem. Richard put Saladin's control of Jerusalem in grave danger by denying him access to the coast. The Crusader army moved inland toward Jerusalem in November of 1191. Saladin was compelled by pressure from his emirs to disband the majority of his army on December 12th. When Richard realized this, he advanced his army. The Crusaders encountered terrible weather, including hailstorms and severe rain, as they approached Jerusalem. This, together with the concern that a relief force may imprison the Crusader army if it besieged Jerusalem, prompted the decision to withdraw to the coast. In June, the Crusader army advanced on Jerusalem once more, approaching the city before being forced to withdraw once more due to conflict among its commanders. Saladin was compelled to sign a deal with Richard when he was defeated once more while trying to recover Jaffa. The treaty stipulated that Jerusalem would continue to be under Muslim rule, but that unarmed Christian visitors and tradesmen would be permitted to enter the city. The objective of retaking Jerusalem was not accomplished by the Third Crusade, but it made it easier for the Crusader states that were about to fall apart to continue. It was now safe for Christians and Muslims to travel to Jerusalem together.